your title, your role, anything that might be helpful for the group to know about you. We were talking about summertime plans. If you got some great summertime plans, you can put those in the chat. So go ahead and start filling all of this information up in the chat. I'm Kathy Colley Robinson. I am the chair of this committee. I'm the chair of our education programs at Durham Tech. And I got to work on my summer plans. So far, I've got one long weekend planned, but got to do some more planning. Okay, so while everybody is putting their information in the chat, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, Alex, I'm joining your family at the beach. Fun. Okay, great. Loving all of the introductions. So as usual, for our virtual meeting, please be on mute unless you're speaking. Have your camera on if possible. Use your chat. If we run into any technical challenges, we do have a few videos that we're going to be watching. And so, sometimes they're a little glitchy to get started with. So just be patient with us as we work through that. And if you need to leave early, just send Tamara a message in the chat box. We've got one voting item and then a possible second voting item today. So we will need to just make sure we know who is here when we get around to voting for all of that stuff. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So here's our first video. I'm going to turn it over to Linda.
Here it goes.
Yay, that was beautiful. Was that a horse at Randy's 5-star?
Right.
That looked like everybody was having such a fun week of the young child, really celebrating with the children. That's so beautiful. Great. And I know we've got another video in the future, so I'm looking forward to that. Okay, we've got a lot to do today as usual. So the first voting item, we have 2 sets of meeting notes that we are going to vote on. We are going to get some information about enrollment numbers. As you all may recall from our April meeting, we are going to discuss the teacher credential policy. We are also going to look and talk about funding and teacher salaries. You may be hearing in the news what our state legislature is working on for a potential budget and how that might impact teacher salaries. We are going to also discuss the 2026-2027 teacher support payment rates and consider authorizing some rate adjustments. And then we are going to wrap up our meeting with some great program updates. A lot's been going on with Durham PreK, so really looking forward to these program updates. And then you will recall we have already confirmed that we are going to have to meet in July because we don't have final budget information yet. So we will need to meet in July to finalize everything for the upcoming year. So we will just revisit that meeting date at the end of our meeting. Okay, well, let's get started then. So the next item on the And our slides are the meeting notes. So in your packet that you've received from Linda, you do have the meeting notes from the meetings in March and in April, and we will need to vote to approve both of those. Linda, are we doing one for March and one for April?
Yes, we
Yeah,
need to do
okay.
two separate votes.
Okay, great. So take a quick minute to review those notes if you haven't already. And then when you're ready, we're going to start with the March meeting. And we're looking for a motion to approve the March 2026 business meeting notes.
So we did have a new member join the meeting, and we are looking for a motion for the March 2026 notes.
I move that we accept the March 2026 minutes. Jason Rutherford.
Thanks, Jason. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
This is Tabitha, second.
Thanks, Tabitha. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your virtual hands to indicate that you are approving the minutes. Okay, let us know when we can start lowering our hands.
Yeah, so we do have a majority that have approved the notes.
Okay, great. Everyone, you can lower your hand. So the March 2026 meeting notes have been approved. So now we need to do the same thing for April. So we are looking for a motion to approve the April meeting notes.
Motion to approve the April meeting notes, Christina Baldridge.
Thanks, Christina. Okay, we've got a motion. Do we have a second?
I second Waukesha Glass.
Thanks, Waukesha. Okay, so just like before, we've got a motion and we have a second. All in favor, raise your virtual hands.
I'm having
Okay.
technical difficulties. Raised hand.
Thanks, Debbie.
Okay, we have a majority have approved the notes.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. So the April 2026 meeting notes have been approved. Great. Okay, so let's go ahead. There we go. So next on the agenda, we're going to hear all about in the enrollment update. And these pictures today, I tell you what, all of the pictures in the presentation are just so beautiful. So Linda, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so we're gonna, as we've promised you every meeting, we are doing enrollment updates for your information. And obviously now we are not accepting new enrollment in the current school year. I'm going to turn it over to Joy Turner, our Director of Data and Provider Relations, to fill you in on the numbers. Next slide.
Thanks, Linda. So these are format you're familiar with seeing. This first chart is broken down by the site type, so private sites, Head Start, and DPS. You can see there have not really been major enrollment changes since February, still overall at 87%, which was the same as in February. Some slight changes at site level, but overall not huge changes. If you'll go to the next slide, this lists them out by seat type. And you can see there have been some increases in some seat types, some decreases in others. I will say typically in the last few months of the year, we tend to see more exits than enrollments as children move away or stop attending, they leave, and it's harder to replace those when you get in the latter half of the year because parents don't want to start their child for just a few months. This year we did see consistent enrollment through, and just in the very last month of enrollment in April is when we started to see more exits than enrollments, which is kind of unusual. Usually we start to see more exits than enrollments a little earlier than that. Just pointing out, we did see some strong enrollment throughout the year, not trailing off at the end as is typical. The numbers are there for you to look at more closely, but I think that's the update I would share. Linda?
Any questions about enrollment?
I know that there's like differentiation between Witted and some of our other programming, but I like my mind continues to struggle with looking at that number. And I don't know if there's like a time or place to like dive deeper into what's happening at Witted or how we can support it better. But I just want to like make a note of that because that's a pretty big distinction.
Yeah, and obviously I'll ask Dr. Pittman if she wants to share, but I will say that in our so you may recall that in our collaborative partners group, which consists of leaders from Durham Partnership for Children, Durham Public Schools, Families and Community Rising, as well as early years, we have facilitated meetings to support our collaboration. And we have done quite a bit of work to look at our outreach and marketing and the team of direct staff who work with those activities directly. We've collaborated together to talk about how we will support all of our sites in telling their story. And Durham Public Schools has done quite a bit of work around Witted, which I know you'll recall from in March, we had a report on that. And then at the recent Board of Education, Board of County Commission joint meeting a couple of weeks ago, we had the opportunity, Dr. Pittman and I had the opportunity also with Karen Thompson to be on that agenda and to talk more deeply about those enrollment activities. And I feel like we are in a good place as we move forward collaboratively to really address the storytelling so that families know about the opportunities available to them.
Yeah.
Dr. Pittman? Or I don't know, is Dr. Pittman still on?
She's
Karen, do you want to? Oh, hey, I
There
didn't
we
know
go.
if you wanted to say anything else about that.
Thank you, Dr. Spell, and for all of you lifting it up, and we just feel so enveloped in support and appreciative of everything. The partners have been amazing in looking at what might have been the one-off over the last, particularly this year, and making sure that as offers are being made to the families of Witted, that we are right on top of all of that. We do have, as we disaggregate out the seats, as I shared in March, our EC separates are way up in the upper 90%. NC pre-K is completely full. It's the DPK seats that is the area we're really targeting additional attention on. And as I shared, the partners and the subsequent meetings have been amazing in looking at how are we making offers to families? How are we connecting with families early and really going after every seat that's offered that families feel good about and are able to accept.
Yeah, and having watched the joint meeting, what was most distinctive to me was learning that there's maybe some confusion in the community around the availability of wraparound services for that, and knowing that broadly speaking, that's a challenge for anyone in these programs. Maybe like making sure we're making a very clear, broad conversation around wraparound care taking place there, feels really important.
Thank you.
I had the
Yeah, and
opportunity, sorry, Linda, to go to Witted for the
No,
very first time, maybe a month ago with some of our students. I think as many opportunities as you can get families in Witted, that will do such a nice job of selling why that's a great place for children. So it's just, yeah, we really enjoyed our visit and our students could really see the all the high quality aspects of what were happening in Whitted. So any opportunities to have families go visit directly, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, and I think, as we work together, really unpacking where the barriers are for families. We know that for many families, wrap care is a barrier across our entire system, as well as for some families, transportation is challenging, as well as certainly other barriers that we want to explore in terms of where our sites are located and how they meet the needs of our community. But as we have done this entire school year, we've reported on enrollment every meeting, and we plan to continue doing that until you tell us that you don't want any more updates. So, but we're feeling encouraged by the work and the plans. So, any other questions about enrollment? Okay, let's move to the next slide. So you'll recall we had a specially called meeting in April to review a request for a waiver from a site. And we also created and had a subcommittee of governance prior to that April 30th meeting to review the waiver request from the site and to review all the documentation and all the implications of that waiver request. But we also were asked by the site that originally requested a waiver, we were asked to review our instructor credential requirements across the board. This is something that, we make a concerted effort to review our policies on a regular basis. These particular requirements were put in place at the beginning of Durham PreK as foundational practices and requirements for the program, because the entire system for reimbursement of sites and our expectation that every lead teacher be paid on the Durham Public School scale with the same credentials, the license credentials, the entire program was built around those requirements. And so we have not reviewed this particular policy since the founding of the program. We have reported regularly on the demographics of our staff and the credentials of our staff. But as a follow-up to their request that governance also review the overall policy, we have prepared information to share with you. Next slide. And you also did get some information in your handouts for the meeting regarding this same information. So, as I already mentioned, this policy has been in place since 2018. And in a nutshell, what we require is that our lead teachers have a teaching license. This, provides a list for you of the many types of licenses that are accepted. And full transparency, North Carolina has, as many states do, a very complex licensing system. As you can see from that list of the different types, they all have their own unique parameters. But the bottom line is that the state determines whether someone is fully licensed. And we have our quality improvement team members who support this effort for teachers to help them navigate that system. In Durham PreK, what we say is that the lead teacher must have their license. If they don't have their license, then they need to have a bachelor's degree or higher in early childhood or related field that's recognized by the NC PreK requirements, which we'll talk about in a minute. And they have to be working on their BK license or hold that emergency BK license. The thing to know about this is that we understand that adult learners need support, and they often need additional navigational support in achieving their BK license. And we are committed to that. But we pay on the Durham Public School scale based on that teaching license. And we also have designed our Durham PreK brand around the fact that the research show, all the body of evidence out there shows that the training and credentialing of teachers has an impact on student success over time. And that was really at the foundation of this program development. Next slide. So the thing to know is, you'll recall, and some of you who are newer governance members, you may not remember, but the way Durham Pre-K works, we first use the NC Pre-K requirements. So, there's a whole policy manual about NC Pre-K. And what we say is, in Durham Pre-K, we say first we use the NC Pre-K requirements, and then governance will assess and determine if a higher standard or a lower standard, which we've never passed a lower standard, but we'll review the NC Pre-K standards and enhance those for Durham Pre-K, or make a decision about a policy. But in the absence of a policy, we always use the NC Pre-K requirements from the state. So we don't have Durham Pre-K policies and processes that are unique to Durham Pre-K in every arena. We do use the NC Pre-K ones first. But in Durham Pre-K, around credentialing, we do monitor closely, and we do not accept all the things that NC Pre-K accepts. So what is different about lead teachers, in bold here on the screen, you can see that in NC Pre-K, they will accept another state's license, and they also will accept some preschool added on licensure that we don't accept. However, to be really clear, someone who doesn't meet all our requirements can begin as a lead teacher and receive support and earn their appropriate credentials. We ask that staff not meeting qualifications, who haven't yet met their qualifications, that their schedules in school, their grades are collected each semester just to track progress towards the qualifications, and that if they don't have full qualifications, that they are working toward them by completing a minimum of 6 documented semester hours per school year with a grade of C or better. And so you might say, well, that's all well and good, but what are you doing to help and support them when they're in that process? Next slide. Okay, so you'll recall that we have quality enhancement coaches that are a huge local investment in Durham Pre-K. And one of the things that they do is support those unlicensed teachers really by some intensive interaction and direct support. So in addition, they receive support from the school they're enrolled in, obviously. But our goal is to help them strengthen their instructional practices while they are also pursuing, ultimately, their BK license. We also have our apprenticeship program, which is an additional workforce support, which does provide intensive wraparound supports and is a pathway toward licensure for some of our staff. You have a handout in your packet that really goes into more detail about what's available in terms of support from the quality enhancement coaches. But I think it is important to know that although we have a stringent policy about our ultimate goal that every lead teacher be fully licensed, we do recognize and support that pathway toward licensure. Next slide. So this really is just to show you over time what it looks like, because you might say, well, it's great to have a policy, but if it's a huge barrier, then we need to know that. But over time, the reality is we did see a dip around COVID in the number of lead teachers with the BK license. But that is not surprising. But as you can see, in recovery from the COVID period, we are back on track for the vast majority of our teachers meet those BK license credentials already. Next slide. So as you can see, just another visual that shows you that 93% of our lead teachers already have their teacher qualifications. And so 3 of 43 lead teachers this current year did not meet the requirements, but 2 of those 3 are enrolled in school working toward earning those requirements. And so that is also an important piece of the puzzle of where we are in, we do have high standards, but what we really want is to take an approach, take that as a supportive approach. Next slide. So this is just another visual for you. Over time, since August of 2022, we've had a significant number of lead teachers earn their BK license. And, this is truly amazing when you think about all the sites and when you think about what the teaching landscape is in North Carolina. You hear on a daily basis about the exodus from teaching. And I would argue that we are working hard to turn that trend around in Durham. So I think that the systems and the supports are what's really making a difference. But you will hear from sites how hard it is to recruit qualified staff. I mean, yesterday I was with a bunch of providers in Raleigh, and they were from all over the state. And that theme was throughout the event, how challenging it is. And you also hear that in the public school arena, K-12. The reality is that people are tired of the modest support for teachers around compensation, both preschool as well as K-12. And I think we're experiencing the impact of that lack of investment. But in Durham Pre-K, I feel that although it is hard to recruit qualified staff, our sites are doing an excellent job. Okay, before we move to the instructional assistants, we've been talking about teachers, lead teachers. Before we do that, I want to just check for questions. Anybody have any questions or anything they would like to weigh in around this issue at this point?
Linda, can you, and I know we've had this information before, the turnover rate for our lead teachers is pretty good. Like we don't have a lot of
Yes.
turnover, right? Yeah.
We don't.
Which
Yeah, we
that's,
don't.
yeah, that speaks volumes.
I don't have that number in front of me. One of our team may be able to look it up while we're meeting. Typically, though, the trend across the entire existence of Durham Pre-K has been that our turnover rate is much less than what the workforce studies show us around the state of North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. And I think the reasoning for that is we do have the high standards, but the pay is high too, relevant to those standards. And so that is what's keeping teachers in their positions, and they're feeling supported because of the rate of pay that they are receiving.
And you don't have to have this number, like, or even if you don't have it, it's fine, but what does it cost if I wanted to be a licensed BK, if I wanted to get my BK license? Assuming I have like the basics, an undergraduate degree or something.
What does
You
it
mean
cost
like
to enroll?
You mean like to get an add-on license, or you do have to get, obviously some people go through the licensing process as they get their undergraduate. Some people do, but then some people add on. You do have to pay to take a test, and that test, I believe there are some scholarships available for the testing, but Kathy, I'm sure you know a lot more about that than I do.
So as that slide showed, there's so many ways to get licensure.
Yeah.
So if we just look at the residency license is the license for individuals who have a degree without the teaching licensure, who've been hired in a public or a charter school or a publicly funded school to then get their licensure. And that cost varies depending upon the program in which individuals are enrolled in. Dr. Glass, if you're still on the call, do you have any idea what y'all's residency program cost?
I am here, and unfortunately, I do not have those numbers. Yes, I do not.
I'm just mostly curious if that is ever a barrier, like for getting someone. I know when we were looking for additional bus drivers in Durham, we worked with the DPS Foundation to actually like literally pay for those fees to just
The
eliminate it.
CDL, yeah, the CDL is
Yeah.
a costly license. What I will say is there's a couple of things. The actual coursework, we work with um, the student to access teach scholarships. So,
Okay.
which is, the teach scholarships are administered by early years for this in North Carolina, but we don't get any special consideration around our students. But that program is available statewide. The the scholarships from Teach allow a person, an applicant to complete their degree without any debt.
Okay.
Those scholarships cover the coursework. And then, in terms of the testing and that type of thing, we can definitely follow back up with y'all and talk about the cost for that. But the
Yeah.
actual coursework that they need, we have not had anyone not eligible and not receive a teach scholarship if they wanted it, if they
Great.
wanted to apply for it. So, and we do help them navigate that process to access those teach scholarships. Okay, so let's talk about instructional assistants. Next slide. So, we're reviewing this overall policy around our credentialing, but our Durham PreK assistants, they have to have one of the items listed. So they have to have an associate's degree in early childhood, or they have to be enrolled and actively taking courses. And it is the same guideline of we expect 6 hours per year is considered pursuing this work. And we have worked with some people who had special circumstances. If they were not able to achieve the full 6 hours in a year, we take that on a case by case basis. But the difference, and we'll on the next slide we'll show you, but Durham PreK does have the expectation that an assistant will have an associate's degree that's at some point, at least an associate's degree. That is different than the NC PreK program. If you'll move to the next slide, this is an area where we have a little bit stronger requirements. So in NC PreK, they do accept the Child Development Associate Credential, the CDA. And the CDA is a fully developed credentialing program nationwide. And it is common in a lot of states to accept it. We don't accept it as a standalone for our instructional assistants in the classrooms. But that is a difference from NC PreK, and it is not one that has been especially problematic for us. Let's move to the next slide and you can see where we are. So the numbers are a little bit different with our instructional assistants, obviously. We have 71% of them meeting those, already having those qualifications, already having their associate's degree. So we do have more who are working on it. 12 of 41 IAs are this school year did not meet the requirements. However, 11 of the 12 who don't have their credential already are enrolled in school and are working toward the requirements. And again, the Teach Scholarship allows them to not have the financial burden for pursuing that coursework. Next slide. So this is where we're at that place where we really want to say to you, what is your feeling about this policy? I will share that if governance feels an investment in changing the policy, we would have to definitely spend time reviewing our compensation requirements for our contracted sites. You recall that they must meet our minimum pay standards, and we do monitor for that minimum pay. And we would also need to revisit our branding materials around Durham PreK, because we do share with our community what our credentials are, and we have since the program began. So if a significant policy change was desired, what we proposed was that, first of all, we would not vote on that till September at the September meeting, because we would also have an implementation timeline to begin the change in the 27-28 school year. That would give us time, if you decide to change this policy, for us to re-examine our compensation plan. Our reimbursement rates are tied to these requirements for additional credentials. And so those are just the implications of this consideration. So I basically want to just open it up and see, do you want to address this in any way?
Thanks, Linda. Okay.
I will say, I think having high standards is what makes the program so great. So I will just say that. I did have a question. Is there a reason that licensure from another state? I'm just curious, like, do different states have more easy license processes? Or I just would love to hear the rationale about that, just knowing that we do have a lot of transplants to this area.
Right. And we work with them over time to do that. Some states, there are agreements, so that from some states, when you move in, you can easily get your North Carolina license from those states where there are agreements. Other states, there may be some requirements that a teacher would have to follow up on. What I would say is that our rationale at the time that this program started was that, because we planned to have support and we planned to have options for working with our teachers, the feeling was that if they moved here, they needed, for their long-term career, as well as for our desire to have equitable instructional credentials across the board, that they would go ahead and work on getting their North Carolina license. For many, it is not difficult at all to do that. But for what we see in NC Pre-K sometimes statewide is that, because that out-of-state license is accepted, the teacher does not pursue the North Carolina license. And so it was more of a prompt of, we want you to do this. But certainly it's not because we've had significant problems with other states.
Can I add, Linda, just from a practical standpoint, that because our pay scale requires payment based on the number of years of experience, and not all states have that on the license, or they might consider, it might not be clear from their licensing whether this person is pre-K trained or just elementary school trained, and we are focusing on the BK part. Other states have different ways of doing that, but from a practical perspective, it's hard to know where on the pay scale they should fall. If they have a totally different license that doesn't list years of experience, then we can't fairly calculate where they should fall on that scale.
June has her hand up.
Yes, good morning. I actually feel quite strongly about this. So even when I was a director, and I understand how hard it is to find qualified staff, I think it's very, very important that we keep the standards that we have. I don't think that suddenly deciding that, it's okay to, I don't know, only have an associate and not have the bachelor's, or only have to have the degree and not the license. I think that Durham Pre-K was predicated on quality. And I think it's really important to keep that. And it's not that I don't understand that this can be a barrier for some people, but you all do try your hardest to support whoever's trying to get their credentials. And the other part about the license is that actually when they get the license, they're considered a beginning teacher, even if they've been teaching for a number of years. And then they have to be enrolled in something called the EES program, Early Educated Support Unit, where for 3 years they have a mentor and evaluator who comes in and works with them and supports them in their teaching journey. And that's another whole part of this process. So I really do think it's important to keep this, no matter how difficult it may be and how challenging. I think that it's important for the overall quality of the program and for the future of the program too. And also because you're paying everybody based on DPS requirements, and how can you do that when they're not, don't have the same qualifications? Anyway, so there you go.
Thanks, June. Beth, I see your hands up.
I just wanted to chime in and agree on that. I do constantly hear the struggle that programs are facing across the state to find and keep qualified teachers. But I think Durham Pre-K has been pretty clear from the outset about, again, the focus on quality, about the requirements. And I think it's part of what makes Durham Pre-K a real model program in showing to other parts of the state and to state lawmakers as well that quality does matter. And I think we see that in the retention. And I think it would be the wrong move to let that quality component slip right now.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. What I say all the time to anyone who will listen is that if you have your BK licensed teacher, if you're a BK licensed teacher, you can work in Durham Pre-K, get paid the exact same thing as if you're in a public school in Durham. That's a huge selling point, and I think it's important that we keep that for the validity of the program, to demonstrate that we are so supportive of quality, so supportive of teachers. So yeah, I echo all of that.
I'm having technical difficulties. Raise hand.
Go, Dr. Pittman.
I can't find my raise hand feature. I apologize. Yeah, I echo two wonderings. The first is, how pervasive is the ask across all partners? That's something to consider. But more importantly, I think when we were presenting to the county commissioners, Dr. Chappelle and I, one of the things that our commissioners are so committed to high quality service and high quality childcare for our families. And it's a huge, solid footing when we're asking for funding and asking for continued commitment to these programs and our work across an expansion, to not waver from the highest quality care. And I echo, we're pushing in and wrapping around to support teachers and individuals to make that. There's also an appetite for looking at our outcomes, our how students are doing. And I think the reason we're doing so well with children and our youngest learners is because of these high quality standards of our teaching workforce. So I support continuing with our standards right now. Hand down.
Thanks, Dr. Pittman. Jason, I see your hands up.
Hey, good morning, everybody. So I guess my commentary is that it sounds like we have a consensus. So at this point, I guess I'm asking, are we waiting on a motion, or are we calling for a question and a vote for the credentials?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go, Linda.
No, I was just going to say, we were basically committed to reviewing the policy. We were not calling for a vote. We were just looking to see whether or not you wanted us to continue to review the overall program and report back what the implications would be if you wanted to change it. But we, as a staff team, it was referenced, who Dr. Pittman referenced, who's asked about this. It was one site that asked for the review, and we were committed to doing what we said we would do and asking this group to discuss the credential policy. So, we could certainly accept a motion, but we weren't necessarily looking for one.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for the clarity.
Okay, great. So it sounds like we're all in agreement to leave the policy as is. And we will continue this conversation and revisiting if necessary. Thank you all for this conversation.
Yeah, I do encourage you, if you haven't seen the chat, there's a couple more pieces of additional information in the chat that are helpful. Thanks to Jamaica, who has worked for a very long time with Durham's Partnership for Children in the NC PreK arena. Even though NC PreK has accepted the out of state licenses, they do with the statewide support program, the EES program. If there is a challenge with somebody's out of state license where there may be concern about that license, the EES does review those licenses and provide additional guidance for teachers. So it's important to know that NC PreK doesn't just step back and not look at these things. So, okay, well, thank you for your input. And as we always do, as this program evolves and grows over time, we are committed to always being transparent about our thinking about our practices and policies. And we appreciate your review and thoughtful input around this issue. Next slide. And actually, we're going to move to a different topic. And I'm going to turn it back over to Joy Turner to talk to us about these payments.
Thanks, Linda. So we have these incentive payments being made to lead teachers and instructional assistants. This year, those were earned through participation in professional development throughout the year. This replaced the COVID temporary end of year instructional bonus payments that we have made for the past several years. And staff will receive a $500 or a $700 payment, depending on the track that they were on. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see the teachers that are receiving these payments. So 88% of lead teachers have earned this incentive payment. 5 will receive $700 and 33 will receive $500. And then 78% of instructional assistants will receive the payment. Those are 30 are $500. There's one will be prorated because the teacher started midway through the year, and she missed the first opportunity, but she completed everything else. So we were prorating that payment based on her participation. In total, that's a little over $35,000 that will be going to teachers, and those payments will be sent as checks and mailed directly to the teachers in mid-June. So, Linda?
Yeah, so you'll recall that with our budget constraints and with obviously the country moving out of supports around COVID, we did commit to trying to compensate teachers, but the feeling was that we needed to look closely at our professional development opportunities because they are outside of the instructional day in some cases, and that compensation was a way for us to provide some additional support. With our upcoming budget, we'll be looking at that and at this time don't know whether this would be something we would do in the future year as yet. In a comparison for fiscal year 24-25, we spent almost $69,000, $68,680 on bonus payments. And so this was a more modest spend, and it did also ask the teachers, the instructional staff to commit to some additional learning and made it possible for them to get additional compensation. So next slide. Just talking about money moves us into the budget. So for those of you who follow the political winds, you may have already heard that we felt really pleased that we were recommended for an increase. In this current climate, there are massive cuts going on across the county government in terms of in the departments at the county, and the money situation is tight in Durham as it is in many communities. And so we were really felt fortunate to be recommended for new funding of $1.27 million. It's recommended, it's not passed as yet, but this was fabulous. But as you can see here, it does fall short of what we needed to maintain this year's service levels. I think that giveth and taketh away. So we are pleased to not be cut. We're pleased to not be inadvertently cut because of the loss of one-time money. And but the reality is we're sad also because seats will have to be cut. The final adoption is June 8th, and there are ongoing meetings that our elected officials are having to hear from a variety of constituencies around the financial issues. So just a little context, let's move to the next slide. What does this mean for where we are in Durham Pre-K? You guys know I'm always going around saying that our long-term goal is to serve 75% of the 4-year-old census, and we continue to have that goal. We don't know for sure yet because the budget hasn't passed, but based on our tentative projections, we believe that we will have to cut 40 fully funded seats. You recall we have what we call Durham Pre-K only. Those are seats that are only paid for with local dollars. And we will have to cut, it looks like we will, those are our most expensive seats if they're not braided. It does look like we'll have to cut about 40 of those seats. In addition, we're going to have to cut 40 to 65 enhanced seats. And what that means is, the reason I broke that out is that we don't want to be misleading. Like if we said we have to cut 105 seats, the reality is that the enhanced seats, that means that we are braiding dollars and enhancing the reimbursement for a seat locally. That seat may still exist within the other fund source, but it will be a cut in resources for that seat. So the reality is some of those seats may go away because the other partners are still looking for budgets also, and they don't know the full implications of potential cuts. But right now, this is a very rough estimate of what we think the implications are. So we don't know where we will be, but for the first time, we will be going backwards. So just wanted to lift that up, unless something changes that we don't anticipate right now. Obviously, we are continuing to advocate because the budget hasn't passed. And because the budget hasn't passed, we can't be guaranteed of what the manager recommended. So we encourage your advocacy to reach out, and we can send some information as a suggested language that might help you as you consider reaching out to our elected officials around the budget. At this point, we were going to look at taking a break and then come back after the break to talk some more about the budget. We can move to the next slide. So, Kathy, if you feel like it's warranted, this is the time we plan to take a break.
Yeah, we're 3 minutes ahead of schedule, which never happens. So let's go ahead and take our full 5-minute break. So we will come back at 10. I can't do math right now, y'all. 10:32. How about that? We'll get started again at 10:32. So take a quick break and we will resume these conversations when we're back. Thanks, everybody.
Can you pause the recording? Welcome, Dr. Aruka. We are coming back from break in about 2 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Chappelle. Sorry to be so tardy.
Thank you very much for coming.
Hi, everybody. It's 10:32. Break's over. Hopefully you did more than I did. I didn't move one bit from my seat. Okay. Great. Recording is back on. All right, Linda, we'll turn it back over to you to continue the budget conversations.
Okay, so just getting us back into this budget talk, and we've been joined by Dr. Aruka also, so welcome. The again, as we said before the break, we are looking to have to cut seats next year based on the budget. Let's move to the next slide. So just to recap, you've seen this slide before, but basically our original budget. So let me clarify. In the community, when you hear that well over $10 million per year is being spent on preschool, a portion of that money does not come through this body. A portion of that money goes directly to the public schools in support of some of their preschool initiatives, including WIDIT as well as some other supports. So Durham County locally is investing well over $10 million per year, specifically in preschool. But that's not where we start from when we look at our budget. Remember last year, we were hoping for an increase, but it was a challenging budget time. But the county actually identified some additional dollars through one-time funding, and they were able to reallocate an additional $770,000 to Durham PreK. And then that was the amount for some seat support. They also reallocated some additional dollars for long-term database development for our online portal. But that was some separate money. But the bottom line is we did get some additional money for the 25-26 school year. That was one-time money. And we were able to avoid cuts to locally funded seats last year. And we also did implement our base salary support payment, which was new, and we increased the teacher support payments. But we were not able to increase our reimbursement rates, even though this body had voted for an increase. We did have to hold that. We are intending to implement the previously approved rate increase in the coming 26-27 school term. Next slide. So that was context for last year. In our ask for this year, basically this slide is just to sort of give you a context. in our original estimates, we looked at that increase that governance had already passed, and we said, okay, how much will that cost us based on our current seat allocations? And so we knew that it was going to cost an additional over $250,000 to support that increased reimbursement rate. Then we also knew that the state planned and still says they plan to increase the child care subsidy rates. And the way that affects our budget is that we have wrap care scholarships for the highest need by income families. And so that increased wrap care rate, we also built into our ask to the county. Then at that time, we estimated that we would need some additional money for teacher raises. Remember that the amount we would ask for in our budget is not the full amount a raise would cost across the board for all teachers, but the portion that we thought at that time we would need to increase our support payments in order to accommodate those raises. So that green box there now is completely doesn't appear to be a correct estimate, because recently the legislature has said that they are looking at an average of 8% increase across the scale. What that means is in North Carolina, they often, when they implement teacher raises, they often weight the raise by the experience of the teachers. They often put additional raise money in the early career stages. And so the average is across all experience levels. So they're talking about an 8% increase. So this number 3 estimate is completely wrong now, but it is what we asked for a few months ago. In addition, we knew we had the $770,000 gap because that was one-time money. And then we also had a gap in our Murray-Massenburg site. So Murray-Massenburg is a Durham Public School site that opened a couple of years ago. And when it opened, it was planned for and has 3 preschool classrooms. And the money at that time that was given for those seats was one-time money, was a grant instead of ongoing budget. And so that created an additional hole in the budget to maintain those 3 classrooms. That money that one-time money went directly to Durham Public Schools. What we were doing was advocating for the money for those seats, regardless of whether it went in the school system budget or into this group's budget, Durham PreK's direct budget. So basically where that left us was we asked for a $2.57 million increase, but that did include, we decided we should ask for what we wanted and not just what we absolutely had to have. And we really wanted to add new seats. So we estimated that we needed an additional $650,000 to expand to a range of 34 to 50 seats. And you'll recall, we always talk in ranges when we're talking about increasing seats, because it's difficult to plan ahead and know whether we're going to be fully paying for a seat or able to braid and partially pay for a seat. So that's why we do ranges. So the bottom line is we asked for 2.57 and we've been recommended for 1.27. So next slide. So historically, we have always mostly grown in a very modest way. COVID really took us off of our path for high growth in the program. But we have at least maintained every year, and we have grown modestly in terms of our seat numbers. We've also been in an environment where there haven't been new investments at the state level or the federal level for public preschool. There's been modest increases to dollars to NC PreK, but there has not been an increase in seat allocations. And in fact, Durham lost some seats last year in NC PreK. In addition, the feds did not come through in some of their proposals over the years to invest in public preschool more strongly. And so we continue in Durham to be at high readiness if new money comes available. We are ready for new seats. However, those resources have not been there. Obviously, this chart will look different next year because we will actually lose seats. Next slide. So just in summary, we didn't get our request, but we are thrilled to have gotten something because so many areas are being cut. Durham Public Schools also was recommended for an increase, but they did not get what they asked for either. Although obviously a larger system, their recommended budget increase is substantially larger than ours, of course. But they did not get what they asked for either because of the really tight financial environment. But again, many programs and services are being downsized and scaled back because of the current economic climate. I can't emphasize enough the fact that the legislature's recommended teacher salary increase of 8% average is going to require, if it passes, which we support more robust compensation for our instructional staff, of course, but implementation wise, there are challenges, but it is going to require additional salary supports from us, from this body. So we're going to move to the next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Joy to talk to you about what the picture really looks like in terms of the impact of those teacher raises.
So, as Linda said, the average increase of what's being proposed by the legislature is 8%, but those raises are skewed towards beginning year teachers, and that's what's shown on this graph. So brand new teachers without any experience would see a 14% raise based on the current proposal, whereas those with higher levels of experience beyond 12 years, they would only get 4 or 5%. And so the skewing of the salary towards the lower levels, it means that sites employing teachers with less experience would shoulder a higher burden of payments. So what this chart shows, the blue line at the top is what you remember Linda said that we were increasing our per child reimbursement rate to $15.14. And so that means sites would get just over $10,000 per year if they have a full classroom of 18 children. And so that's what that blue line, that's the new money they're getting from the rate increase, is that blue line. The green lines are for each level of experience, the increased cost that the provider would shoulder based on these new this new salary scale if we made no changes to our support payment model. The orange is the increase they would shoulder if governance approves an increase to the IA rate in July that had been discussed. And so just trying to show you how much of the new money they're getting would be going to teacher salaries, and how you can see if they have a teacher, especially between 0 and 10 years of experience, the majority of that new money is going towards just the teacher salary. It's I believe it's 70%. If you have a teacher with 0 years of experience, 70% of their new money would go directly to teacher pay, which means that it's not leaving money from the rate increase to cover increased rent cost, utility cost, food costs, supply cost, all the things that we're seeing, costs increasing. And so we do have concerns about providers owing more depending on the number of years of experience their teacher has. Right now, it is fairly even. There's like slight differences, but if I put it on a chart, you'd have to kind of look closely to see the differences. It's almost a straight line across experiences, what a teacher, what a site is responsible for, regardless of the years of experience that the teacher has. This is clearly a difference. And so we really feel like we need to adjust both the base and the experienced teacher support payments to address this issue, so that there's less of a disparate impact on sites depending on the experience level of the teacher that they employ, to kind of flatten that out again, so it's more similar to what we have had in the past. Any questions about that?
Joy, this is a silly thing. Why does it go up in year 10?
Because there's that that's the first after the very first year, that's the first I think from year 2 through 9, the rate goes up one amount, and then there's a bump at year 10 that's high. So I think it's like twice the bump at the years before that. You get twice that amount when you hit 10, and so that's why it bumps up there.
Got it. Thanks.
And then it starts to go back down again after the 10 year.
Yeah, I mean, that's the what, but the why is hard to understand.
Right. That's what the legislature decided to do, is how they are implementing these raises.
If it passes, and
Right.
it's difficult to know, but it does seem that the momentum is such that we believe it's likely to pass. And certainly the lack of raises is very problematic. I mean, we see massive changes in the numbers of teachers in North Carolina. There's a lot of turnover, and I think that there's a lot of pressure on the state to do something. So it is likely to change. We are planning as if it is going to change. That's where we are at this point.
It's good optics for them. We still have to pay for it at the local level. It's like the perfect move from this government.
Yes. Yeah. I do want to reiterate from this that you'll recall that our reimbursement rate per child per month is the base, obviously the most basic way that our sites are compensated for providing these services. We never intended for the teacher support payments to pay the salary. That is not their job, but they are to make it possible for our sites to hire teachers, irregardless of their experience, to hire the best applicant, the best candidate for the job, and not be worried about how many years experience somebody has and how it impacts the budget. So we never intend to fully cover the salaries, but when we added the base payment last year, and then we have over the years adjusted the additional teacher support payments, it has allowed us to maintain the high quality programs because the sites have the resources they need. But obviously any business, the majority of their dollars is going to go toward personnel. I mean, maybe there's some business that's not the case, but in our world, obviously it is. And but we want to be very mindful. We don't want to make Durham PreK a program that a site just cannot implement financially. We don't want to get into that bind. Okay, next slide. So you're probably saying to yourself, well, what do they want from us? So we wanted to inform you about where we are with the budget. And first of all, of course, we already talked about that. We encourage you and hope that you will advocate for the program by reaching out to our elected officials to endorse at a minimum the county manager's recommendation for additional funding for Durham PreK. And then beyond that, obviously, if any other advocacy is always welcome in terms of support for the program. So there is that piece. But then beyond that, at this point, we need to get your consideration for this issue of the teacher salary increase. We believe strongly that the teacher salary support payments and potentially that base payment that also helps with the instructional assistance, it has to be adjusted to support the new salary scale if it passes. We don't know, obviously, who would have predicted North Carolina wouldn't have a budget at all for as long as it has. So we're not able to say for sure, but we are planning as if it's going to pass. And then in terms of our final budget, which we will report back in July to you, at the July meeting, we will make the seat cuts as required by the final budget. But what we do need is your endorsement of our team adjusting the salary support payments. We have never, you haven't voted on the actual amounts ever. We're not asking you to, endorse a certain amount or change because we don't know what's going to pass yet. But what we are hoping for is, let's move to the next slide. What we're hoping for is for you to consider authorizing us to adjust the teacher support payments as needed, as dictated by the budget change or the salary change. And then, of course, we would provide a report of where we land at that July meeting. And the only way to get the money to do this is to incorporate that into seat cuts. And so the amount I told you that we think we're going to cut seats may change based on what happens with this salary support amount. But obviously, we would report back to you in July, but it would be very difficult for us to wait until July to make this plan and this change because we will also need to communicate with our sites. So that's where we are. We would like to ask you to consider a motion to allow us to make those adjustments to the teacher support payments and both the teacher support payments as well as the base support payments.
Thanks, Linda. Alex, I see your hands up.
Yes, I was wondering if there's any way to ensure that the remaining pre-K slots are going to the families with greatest need as we're cutting slots? Is that,
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if we can
Yes.
lower eligibility thresholds, but just even,
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, you already have a policy where you require us to prioritize families with higher income need, as well as children who developmentally are identified as having additional needs. And so the way that will work in practice is for the placement process, when we have to cut seats, we will have fewer seats available. And that means that prioritization becomes even more important. So yes, what the cuts mean is that our broad universal program will not be as universal because there won't be as many seats for families who have more advantages. It doesn't mean there won't be any, but we do place children by greatest need, and that would be even more important in an environment of reduced seats.
Any other questions or discussions or clarifications? This is a hard conversation, you all. Just the realities of budgeting right now. Christina, I see you're unmuted.
I'm curious for the future optics, does this inherently make it seem like we are overspending per pupil? Like I just watched the the joint county meeting, right? And one of the slides that was shared that was kind of like used as a bit of a cudgel was that the cost that DPS is spending per student has risen dramatically, right? Fewer students, but we're spending the same. The ratio works like that. Is that anything we
Yeah,
just
well,
like?
yeah.
Yeah. I'm just curious. Like, is that a thing we have to care about?
Yeah. I mean, adjusting the teacher support payments, that's not a per child payment, obviously. It's based on the teacher. So our overall cost per child will go up based on all of the inputs, all the funding that we provide. So yes, our per child rate will go up if we increase our teacher support payments. I think that for Durham Public Schools, one of the concerns related to that has been that the overall school system has had some decreases in enrollment across all grade level, across the
Right.
board. There's just been some decrease of enrollment, but there hasn't been an adjustment there's been more money going in. And the reality is with inflation and everything else, I think that, obviously it's a complex issue and misleading. But yes, any increase in compensation to teachers that we provide extra money to the sites for does increase our per child overall investment, because it means we would have fewer seats because we don't have the money, we would have to cut seats. And so it does cost more per classroom to operate. Yes. Now, whether or not it's um, out of proportion, I think that, compared to inflation, because we have not raised our reimbursement rate in alignment with inflation the last few years, I think that we are unlikely to be out of balance. However, we could certainly do more analysis for that and, report back in July. But it is certainly for our community, there's a threshold of expectation of access. And this decrease in seats decreases access.
Yeah.
And, so that is certainly, an issue. But I think that the bottom line is that the lack of investment at the state level and the federal level means that we can only do so much with our local money.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's also important too. I mean, there are lots of conversations when we're talking about the subsidy rates in North Carolina. There's a lot of conversation with the legislature about what the true cost of care is. And I think that will be important to include in conversations and advocacy efforts with all elected officials about what that true cost of care is. And Linda, I hate to ask your team to do anything extra, but is that some information y'all could provide to us? Like, what is the true cost of care for a Durham pre-K student? How much does that really cost? Yeah. And I think it's really helpful when we look at how the true cost of care, we're never covering that full amount.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. It's a very complicated amount of money. It's a whole complicated system. So I think if we can just have some very basic information to say, yeah, we are asking for X amount of dollars, but really the true cost of care is this amount of dollars, and look at what we're doing with this discrepancy. Like, look at all of
ROI.
Yeah.
Right. And I will say, you'll recall it in past meetings, and we will do it again, is one of our benchmarks is to look at the whole market. So what we do is we compare the investment per child in Durham pre-K to the market for private pay in Durham. Private pay, is one measure of the cost. It's not a good measure, because the reality is in early childhood, the backs for payment, parents cannot afford to pay what true quality care costs. And so for a lot of private pay, it's adjusted by what people can afford.
Mm-hmm.
And, certainly you have some programs that have very high tuition, but they are serving those families who, are more privileged to have that kind of income. But what we will do, and what we have done numerous times, is we will contextualize the Durham pre-K investment. We will compare it to the subsidy reimbursement rate, which presently in North Carolina does not even meet the 2023 market rate, even though the federal government Child Care Development Block Grant requires that a state reimburse for subsidy at the level of the most recent and relevant market rate. North Carolina is out of compliance with that. So what that means, not to get into the weeds, but what that means is that families who are getting financial assistance for childcare based on their income, birth to 5, the reimbursement rate the child care provider is getting from the state, that subsidy, is too low. And so then what happens is you have families living with lower income who are often asked to pay the difference not only do they have to pay their parent copay based on their income that's affiliated with their voucher, they also are being asked to pay the difference between the tuition rate and the subsidy reimbursement rate. And anyway, it's obviously quite complex, but what we will do and we do this regularly, is we will compare the investment of Durham Pre-K per child to those subsidy rates, to the private pay rates, both locally, specifically in Durham, but then also in the Triangle area. The reality is right now, we're actually not in a good spot with our proposed 15-14 reimbursement rate for this school year coming up. Based on inflation and based on the current landscape of private care, when Durham PreK started, we had a substantial difference between our reimbursement rate and what a provider would receive through private pay. But now that gap, I mean, is much closer, but yet we have a lot more requirements than a private childcare program has from the state. So that we'll definitely do a full update on that, and contextualize it in our update around the budget.
Thanks, Linda. Okay, so what we're looking for here is a motion that would authorize early year staff, Durham Pre-K staff, to adjust the teacher support payments based on all of the information that we've received, and then they will report back at the July 2026 governance meeting. So looking for a motion.
Motion to approve the teacher salary support payments based on the discussion just now.
Okay, we've got a motion. Thanks, Christina.
This is Alex. I'll second.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Okay, so this is one we got to raise our hands for too. And we do have two members that need to, we're going to do a yes, a no, and then a recuse. So Dr. Pittman and Ms. Carter, you will need to recuse yourself from this voting process. Okay.
About to ask. Very good.
Great. Okay, so all in favor of the motion to authorize early year staff to adjust the teacher support payments, go ahead and raise your virtual hands.
Okay, we have 5 virtual hands up. So we have 5 yeses.
Okay, so virtual hands down. And then if you're not in favor of this vote, of this motion, please raise your hand.
Okay, there's 0 no's.
0 no's. And then we have Dr. Pittman and Ms. And Brenda recusing.
Okay.
Okay. So the motion's passed.
Based on voting members who are here, the motion passes.
Great. Thanks, everybody. So we will hear more at the July meeting. I anticipate at our July meeting, we probably won't have a lot of time for great updates from Durham Pre-K. We will be talking all about budgeting. So the good news is the next part of our agenda, which is all the great stuff. We'll get to hear a lot of great updates. So I'll turn it back to Linda.
Okay, next slide. So we have another fun video, and then we are turning over this program updates section of our meeting to Tamara Mathis, who is the director of Durham Pre-K.
My name is Blake Ivy Patterson, and I am 5 years old.
What site do you go to?
I am in the yellow room.
You're at White Rock?
Yes.
Awesome. What is your favorite center?
It may be like blocks and home living, because like you can play family and home living, and then blocks you can play with blocks.
And what is your favorite thing about coming to school?
I like how we do science experiments and arts and crafts. Then a sink or float. And we've also done a pumpkin bouquet
Yes, we do.
Wow. What's your name?
Makai,
Makai, where do you go to school?
pre-K,
What's your favorite thing about coming to school?
learning
Learning. Can you tell me something that you've learned at school?
about Spanish and our months of the year.
What is something new that you learned here?
We talk about letters.
Yeah. Who is your favorite teacher?
Miss Williams,
Why is she your favorite?
because she likes me.
Tell them about the butterflies in your career.
One has already hatched, but some chrysalises have already fallen.
Are you excited to go to kindergarten?
Yeah, and I'm gonna be a big kid. I go to a big kid school.
Do you guys enjoy coming to school?
Yeah.
What is something that you guys have learned at school?
What are letters, numbers,
What's your name?
Ryan.
Ryan, where do you go to school?
There's sparkle.
Your favorite thing about coming to school?
Learning and playing and eating lunch and breakfast and snack on the afternoon.
Ooh, what's your favorite snack or lunch that you have at school?
One is green.
What are you eating today?
It's my favorite. Ice cream.
What is something that you learned at school?
Spanish.
You know Spanish? Can you say a word in Spanish?
Hola. Hola. Hola.
What does that mean?
That means hello.
Who is your favorite teacher at school?
What's her name? Miss Julia.
Or your favorite center?
Kitchen area.
Do you cook in there?
Yes. I love cooking. Even I cook at home.
You cook
When
at
I
home?
told you. Even
Spoken
Yeah,
from
we're
the
gonna-
mouths of babes. All right, for our program updates for this year for 2026-27 as of May, we have 1,000 applications in the online portal that opened in March of 26 this year. This is a 3% increase to date compared to the 2025 opening. And for last school year, we have 1,833 applications received online that opened in February of 25, and enrollment is closed for the current school year. Now I will let Maggie talk a little bit about our apprenticeship celebrations.
Yes, thank you, Tamara. Hello, everyone. I'm Maggie West. I'm the Workforce Support Program Manager for Durham Pre-K with Early Years. And we just wanted to share a few updates on all of our workforce support. So first is some great news. We were able to celebrate this May with 5 of our apprentices who graduated with their associate degree in early childhood education from Durham Tech. This is from a celebration that we had with the apprentices and their families before the official commencement later that afternoon at DPAC for Durham Tech. So many of these students joined during our very first semester of the apprenticeship program when we launched in October of 2023. So they've been with us the whole way. And these 5 apprentices represent 5 different centers that we partner with through the program: Yates Baptist, Primary Colors, Randy's 5-Star, First Chronicles, and Primrose School of Chapel Hill East. You can go to the next slide. All right, a few more updates from our apprenticeship program. We currently have 45 registered apprentices, including 10 who are enrolled in our newest tier of the apprenticeship program, the pre-apprenticeship. And those participants are going through the Child Care Academy, or just recently completed actually the Child Care Academy at Durham Tech. They were one of the 3 cohorts enrolled during spring of 2026, and are folks who are actively seeking employment in early childhood education, who we hope will then continue on into the apprenticeship program. to continue growing in the field. We do have two participants from the spring academies who've already been hired as apprentices and are reflected in this group as certificate apprentices now and have completed the pre-apprenticeship. We now have 26 partnering childcare centers in the program, and that includes 3 new partnering employers that have joined in the last couple of months. Families and Communities Rising, we're thrilled to welcome to the program, as well as Lightbridge Academy of Durham and Spanish for Fun. Other highlights of this fiscal year so far, coming out of the academies over the course of this year, we've had 16 of the participants who've been newly hired in early childhood. And then I would also highlight of the 16 graduates who are listed here total for this fiscal year, 6 of those graduates completed the certificate apprenticeship program, 5 completed the associate degree apprenticeship, and 5 completed the pre-apprenticeship. You can go to the next slide. And then last but not least, we're really excited to share with you all that the apprenticeship program received a statewide award through Apprenticeship NC. We were recognized as the outstanding group program for the state. And this is not just for early childhood apprenticeships, but for apprenticeships across all industries in North Carolina. And we officially accepted the award at a ceremony at Durham PreK just a couple of days ago. And we're grateful that one of our apprentices who just completed the pre-apprenticeship and has started working at the little school at Duke, as well as her employer from the little school, were able to come and share some about their experiences with the program during the ceremony. And it was just a lovely chance to get to see this spotlight shine on early childhood as a profession, where apprenticeship historically is more associated with trades like manufacturing, and to be able to see education lifted up at the statewide level is really exciting. And then we have to give special thanks to our colleagues at Durham Tech, because they're the ones that nominated us for this statewide award. So Dr. Norman Collins Sr. is the apprenticeship director at Durham Tech, and he put us up for this award, and we're grateful and excited to receive it.
All right, thank you, Maggie. Next, we'll have Nita McAdoo to tell us about our technical assistance, our TA updates.
Thanks, Tamara. Once again, Nita McAdoo. I'm an instructional support manager with Durham PreK. These are just some highlights for April, centered around coaching and some of the technical assistance that happened. The teacher assistant seminar was one of the PD activities that was attached to the stipend that Joy was referring to. We had 35 teacher assistant seminar participants, and the focus of the seminar was on math activities and how to document using teaching strategies, documentation, like for math objectives. So we looked at multiple math objectives and how to document that and how to capture data during that session. The professional learning community, that was not attached to the stipend, but it is required for them to attend. We had 72 teachers log on. The topic for the PLC was the kindergarten bridge, preparing children and families for what's next. And so in that seminar, we talked about and shared ways to foster independence and confidence with the children. You know, what kind of activities are you doing in your room? We talked about family engagement. Teachers shared ways that they are connecting with kindergarten teachers with DPS and how they're connecting with schools. So we did have some pre-K classrooms connect with elementary schools and actually do on-site tours. They were able to tour the cafeteria, the bus, see the hallways. And you can imagine for some children, this is going to be a big move. So teachers were sharing with other teachers what their schools are doing for those connections. We talked about 2 to 3 strategies or activities that they could do through the end of the year to foster those collaborations and make transitions smooth. And then we had a slide where it had events that Durham Public Schools shared with us. Shawan Lee gave us some events that were happening in the community. So we shared that with the teachers and encouraged them to share that with their families. And we had a slide that listed year-round registration and traditional calendar, and then centers shared activities that they were doing for kindergarten transition. And then the next thing we had with the Finch Literacy Screening Assessment Tool, we invited the Office of Early Learning to speak at the Durham Pre-K and NC Pre-K directors meeting on how, as a director, you can support your teachers in the classroom with getting the Finch literacy screening done. And NC Pre-K had a deadline of May 18th. And so we, Durham Pre-K, we actually refer any questions around Finch to Brianna, who works at Durham Partnership for Children. So we try to support her in that, but send the teachers to NC Pre-K directly if they have specific questions. And our last community of practice was May 15th, but for the April, we talked about process versus product art. And so we talked to teachers about having art that has an end to it, but also having art to it that the child just can choose the medium that they want, and whatever they create is their art. So there's not a right or wrong. We just talked about what the benefits are of process versus product art. And then April 29th was our last MMCI group coaching. MMCI is a year-long professional development program designed to help a teacher improve their quality of teaching in their classroom. And the sessions were an interactive small group. We had 5 teachers complete the MMCI group coaching, and that will help them in the classroom be able to do the domains and the dimensions at a higher level. And then in the fall of 2026, they will begin the MMCI reflection session journey. So they will do one in the fall, in the winter, and the spring. So they will continue to use class. The journey is not over, just the 12 series sessions are over. And then you see the math theme. We continue with math books, TSG 20 through 23, which is comprehends and responds to books. So that's our updates for DPK. Anyone has any questions, just let me know.
Thank you, Nita.
You are welcome.
All right, next up, we'll have our outreach update.
Good morning. The outreach team has continued with community outreach efforts through tabling events and partnerships across Durham County, just to increase the awareness of Durham PreK, to share enrollment resources with families, and to strengthen family and community engagement connections. Those are all of our updates for outreach.
Thank you, Tosh. And we'll turn it back over to Linda.
Okay, and I'll turn it over to Kathy because basically, amazingly, we are close to the end of our meeting. Mostly, we just need to touch base about that July meeting.
Yeah, so this extra 10 minutes that we've got for this meeting, just go ahead and save those for the July meeting because we're going to have a lot to talk about. Okay, so just some reminders about our meeting schedule. Our next meeting, we're scheduled that July the 16th at our usual time, 9:30 to 10:30. Then go ahead, put it on your calendar. Our first meeting in for 2026, 2027 school year, we're going to have that one in person. At our usual place at the Jim and Carolyn Hunt Early Childhood Resource Center. That's going to be Thursday, September the 17th from 9:30 till noon, and lunch will be provided. Any other final announcements or information for the group?
I just had a quick question. So originally, the July meeting was only going to address the instructional assistant compensation issue as a follow-up to our April meeting. So we abbreviated the meeting to an hour. Of course, we did not know at that time that all these other things were going to come up. Is it the preference of the group that we go ahead and block the normal 2 hour time frame? But, obviously if we don't need to meet that long, we won't, or would you rather us try to frame the agenda to only last an hour?
I think we need to block the 2 hours.
Are we talking about the September meeting? Sorry, I'm not.
No, sorry, the July meeting.
The July meeting, I see. So now I need to mark my calendar for 2 hours. Okay, hold on. Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, typically when we meet in July, it's only as needed, and in the past, we haven't needed to meet some years we haven't needed to meet at all, but when we have met, it has typically been shorter. This does seem like it might be difficult to fit into an hour, but the goal would be to make it as reasonable as possible because it's not a typical meeting date.
Yeah, I feel like to be on the safe side, let's just block the 2 hours and then hope that we'll only have to use an hour. Any other?
I'll adjust the meeting invites so that it'll show up on your calendar for the longer time.
Okay, great. Anything else for the good of the group? All right. Well, we thank you all so much for your attendance and your participation today. We'll need a motion to adjourn. Anybody so moved to make that motion?
This is Tabitha. I'll move to adjourn.
Thank you so much. Great. Tabitha has made the motion. Do we have a second to adjourn?
I second. This is Waukesha.
Thanks, Waukesha.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Have a lovely summer. Those of you who are going to Ireland and Scotland and the beach and other places, and Tabitha, I'm coming with you. If you are in favor of adjourning, just feel free to leave.